Hello, everybody. I would like to welcome you to the sixth VALPRO Path webinar on life cycle assessment of plant protein products. My name is Dušan Šimpraga from Foodscale Hub, and I'm one of the communication managers of the VALPRO Path project and would be moderating this session. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Tryfon Kekes, senior researcher at the National Technical University of Athens, and Dr. Jerico Fiestas-Flores, postdoctoral researcher at the Leibniz University at Hannover.
Good morning to everybody. My name is Tryfon Kekes, and I am a senior researcher in the National Technical University of Athens. And as Richard said, we are a partner in the VALPRO Path European project. Our main activities in VALPRO Path consists of doing the environmental and economic sustainability analysis of some business cases developed within the project. Today, we are going to present you some results regarding the environmental sustainability of two of the business cases. So how can we measure the environmental sustainability? We can measure it by the LCA methodology, the life cycle assessment methodology, that can identify environmental impacts and hotspots throughout a product's life cycle, taking into account the extraction of raw materials, the production processes, the consumer phase, and the end of life of the product. Additionally, LCA can support decisions on where we need to focus in order to improve the environmental sustainability. In VALPRO Path project, we performed the LCA analysis based on ISO 14040 and 14044 recommendation series, which are
sorry, just to let you know, you're not in full screen mode.
Okay, let me just share my whole screen. Now?
Not yet.
Now it's in full?
Yes,
now we can see.
Okay. So we perform the LCA methodology using the ISO recommendation series, and the LCA methodology can be divided in 4 different steps. First, we define the goal and scope of the analysis, meaning what we need to evaluate and what is our main objective in the analysis. The second part is that we perform the life cycle inventory analysis, meaning that we collect all necessary data to perform the analysis. In the third step, we do the analysis by the impact assessment methodology. And finally, we interpret the obtained results. As Richard mentioned, today we are going to present the results from 2 different business cases. The first business case involves the production of a legume-based burger. Our main goal was to evaluate the environmental impact of an already existing plant-based burger that uses pea protein, pea flour, and lentil flour as the main ingredients, and then discuss and evaluate different scenarios that can improve the environmental sustainability of the business case. These scenarios focused on the transportation distance of the major ingredients and the use of alternative packaging materials. Our system boundaries were from cradle to grave, meaning that we took into account the production of the vegan burger and the production chain, meaning that the consumers facing the end of life of the product is also taken into account. The functional unit was 1 package of 2 burgers, which was 400 grams of product. In this slide, we can see the different scenarios along with the recipe of the vegan burger. We can see that pea protein, lentil flour, and pea flour are the main ingredients used in the production of the vegan burger, and the different scenarios involved the transportation and the local sourcing of these ingredients, and also the use of alternative packaging materials like biopolyethylene, PLA, and polyethylene. Based on the results, we identified that the local sourcing of the ingredients provided numerous environmental benefits compared to the baseline scenario, and also the utilization of different packaging materials and that are more environmentally friendly improved the performance of the product. Our optimum scenario included the local sourcing of the pea flour and the use of biopolyethylene material as the packaging material. Based on the results, we can see a significant improvement in all studied environmental categories, with the greenhouse gas emissions being reduced by almost 60%. Also, sustainable results were obtained for fossil depletion, meaning the use of fossil fuels like diesel or so on, and fine particulate matter formation. The second business case that we're going to present today regards the exploitation of European cultivated peanuts. In general, peanuts are not cultivated so much in Europe and are mainly imported from other countries like Argentina. So our main goal was to evaluate the environmental performance of European cultivated peanuts coupled with on-farm deselling processes and then some subsequent processing to produce relevant products like peanut butter, peanut milk, and peanut oil. You can see also the flow chart that we have identified and collected all necessary data. Our system boundaries were up to the gate of the factory, meaning that in this analysis we didn't take into account the consumer phase, since our primary objective was to evaluate if the European cultivated and processed peanuts are more sustainable compared to peanuts that are imported in Europe. We have developed 4 different scenarios. In the first scenario, peanuts are cultivated in Argentina, transported to Europe for deselling and subsequent processing. In the second scenario, peanuts are cultivated in Europe and more specifically in Portugal, where we get some data from partners of the consortium, of the VALPRO Path consortium, and the cells are not valorized, while in the third and fourth scenario, peanuts are cultivated in Portugal and the cells are valorized. In the third scenario, they are valorized to produce thermal energy, meaning that they are combusted to produce thermal energy, while in the fourth scenario, in the latter scenario, they are valorized to produce bioplastics that can then be used as packaging materials. Based on the results, it is evident that all peanuts that are cultivated in Europe exhibit superior environmental performance compared to the peanuts that are produced in Argentina and then transported to Europe to be processed. This is mainly attributed to the large transportation distances between Argentina and other countries that export peanuts to the European market. Additionally, it is evident that if the cells are valorized or any other side stream in a business case is valorized, then the environmental performance of the business case can be significantly improved. More specifically, for the peanuts that are produced in Europe and the cells are valorized to produce bioplastic and thermal energy, we can see a significant decrease in greenhouse gas emissions, which can be attained to 80% decrease. So to conclude with, the results from these 2 business cases of the VALPRO Path project, along with results from other business cases that we have developed, show some clear conclusions. For example, we can conclude that the European grown legumes and the peanuts can be environmentally sustainable and have lower environmental impacts compared to products that are imported in Europe. If we reduce the transportation of the ingredient and locally source the main ingredients, we can lower the environmental impact, and thus also we can support regional protein hubs and EU self-sufficiency goals. Additionally, the valorization of side streams like the peanut cells in the peanut business case can significantly improve the environmental efficiency and the economic viability of business cases developed in Europe. And with these results and conclusions, we can strengthen the position of European crop-based proteins compared to imports, and an investment in the EU processing capacity may be encouraged. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Tryfon. Now, next up, we have Dr. Jerico to present.
Hello, everyone. I'm just going to share my screen. Yeah, please let me know if everything is working okay.
Yes, we see the screen. Yeah, that's good.
Okay. Thank you very much for the invitation today. I am Jerico Fiestas-Flores, part of the project called Valereco, valorization of legume. The valorization of the ecosystem services provided by legumes, Valereco. And today I would like to present a view from different actors' perspective about alternative protein sources. First, I would like to introduce Valereco, which is a project, a EU also Horizon project, a sister project from VALPRO Path, which aims to analyze how we can increase the adoption of legumes in Europe, and also how the knowledge of ecosystem services provided by legumes affects or not the adoption of these crops by different actors. So I'd like to just start as an overview of how plant-based proteins or alternative proteins are growing. Although during the last years, the plant-based protein market has suffered significantly growth, now we are seeing that is growing slower, or like it's staggering in a phase that is harder for more and more consumers to take them or adopt them completely. And this has also led to different alternative proteins like insects, edible mushrooms, and algae, for example. And these are also promoted as more sustainable. And we are here to talk about how sustainable they are. And as the previous presentation showed, plant-based alternatives in a life cycle assessment can show that they are more sustainable than the alternatives, which are at the moment animal-based products. And for that, we've seen over the years that animal-based products like fish, eggs, pork, poultry, dairy, and beef considerably use way more resources than their plant-based counterparts, like pulses and maize, but also emit way more emissions or greenhouse emissions compared to the plant-based alternatives. And this has evolved during the years, and our understanding of the impacts of animal-based proteins has increased. However, people still assume that it's important, or at least it's more efficient, to consume animal-based products. However, we also know that now that they are also not only resource extensive or intensive, in this case, they use a lot of resources, but they also not as efficient as we might think. Right? To produce, in this graph, for example, the study analyzes by Alexander et al. Analyzes how much land, agricultural land, is needed to create a protein of a calorie yield or caloric yield, or also protein yield of different alternative protein sources. And we can see that only 5% of the land use is transformed in caloric yield or protein yield in beef, whether in soybean, for example, is almost 50%. So there is also this new shift that is not only resource intensive, but also we know that animal protein is not as efficient as we might led to believe over the years. And with this new information, actors or consumers might think like, we might have expected for them to make a shift, but still there are a lot of different variables that make us as consumers have difficulties to make these changes. And we can see now that, for example, in a later survey by Statista this year, most of Europeans do not follow any nutrition rules, and the number of vegans, pescatarians, and vegetarians are still, on average, in Europe around 3-4%, which is a value that has also stayed quite stable during the years, which is something to celebrate, but still raises questions of how much more we can penetrate with the plant-based proteins. However, we also have to consider that people with non-dietary restrictions are also interested on reducing meat consumption, which is shown by the Good Food Institute in Europe, also on a recent survey this year. Most of the participants think they are consuming too much meat. And this is also thanks to more guidelines showing that average European consumer is eating way more than the recommended amount of kilograms per year. So people is also getting more aware of these necessary changes in our dietary patterns. And this is where plant-based protein can offer a solution of have a nutrition sustainable way to nourish ourselves. However, there are some barriers also to adopt these plant-based options. And in a latest study by the Smart Proteins, also a former sister project from Leibniz and VALPRO Path, although we would expect that the price will be, or plant-based food alternatives are considered to be expensive, one important factor that limits consumers right now to access or to try these new products are the texture or the taste. Right? Taste is a very important component for us now that the products are getting cheaper and they're getting more available. But if they don't taste good enough, even though they provide way more benefits in terms of resource use and greenhouse emissions, and also being more efficient, consumers might not consider this as a suitable alternative or a suitable substitute because taste is not good enough. And that's what also these innovation projects also take place and are key in order for us to do a transition in the food system that we have at the moment. However, also another barrier is the information about the plant food alternatives. But the interesting part about this survey is that they also is a continuation of survey did in 2021. And as you can see, the third reason in 2021 was the family or partner are not so happy with the consumption, or they don't have the same diet. But now this reason has also gone down several points, several positions, and now it's in 7th position from the overall, which means also that plant-based alternatives are becoming more acceptance, not only by those that consume it, but also by relatives and families, which is an important point, because the social environment where we consume our products or we consume our food also matters. And from a systemic point of view, we need to make these alternatives more available. And that's what all these projects aim to do, to understand what we can do to show that these are not only more beneficiary they provide more benefits to your health and to the environment, but also they can be more accepted and provide you with sufficient nutrition or protein in this case. So what we did, following this overall situation, what we did in Valereco was to launch a status quo survey to analyze the preference from different actors for legumes in particular, because that's our main protein source, as we think that we need a diversity of source alternatives for consumers, but also farmers and retailers to adopt in the future. What we found is that the main reason for our participants, we collected 1,000 surveys from farmers and consumers and 90 interviews from retail. So these are the results we just got out of the oven last month. So we are getting more information about what are the enablers and barriers for consumers, farmers, and retailers. And we find that for consumers, for example, who consume legumes like the taste, they like also nutritional properties, and they consider this as an important value. And they find that they are easy to prepare. But consider that this englobes all the different presentations for legumes, not only in the canned version, but also the fresh version, and also the ready-to-make products or processed legume products like plant-based beverage, for example, or also vegan patties or all the other sources of texture protein. However, the main barrier that we find and that we find interesting that deserves more further analysis is most of our participants do not have an actual reason to limit their consumption of legume in the future. At the moment, in Europe, the consumption of legume is small, and also the land used for legumes is only 2 to 3% of the agricultural land, meaning that there is still a lot of room for growing of this crop for direct consumption, but also as an ingredient for different inputs, as an ingredient for different plant-based products, sorry. But we can see also that farmers face low profit margins, yield instability, and lack to access to markets, which is one of the main factors that limit their adoptions for them in the future. And retailers consider that supply chains and production constraints, as well as the price and market competitions, hinders them to adopt more legumes in the future, or at least in their establishments. So we now have an overview of the barriers and enablers of legumes, that we wanted also to know how much do our participants knew about the ecosystem services provided by legumes. And we found that the overall knowledge is not as uneven as we expected. Consumers are aware of the soil health benefits and the biodiversity conservation provided by the crops, while retailers are more aware about the carbon concentration. And all of our participants, particularly farmers, are more aware of the benefit the benefit of nitrogen fixation provided by legumes, as well as soil health and biodiversity conservation. Some other ones that are not so well known, but also provided by legumes, are pollination, pest control, water management. And most consumers and farmers do not know that legumes also, as a cover crop, can also sequester carbon. So what we did, and to finalize my presentation, is we ask consumers and farmers whether they would like to consume legumes or produce legumes in the future. And then we provided with this information about the benefits provided by legumes, right? We presented a table and a visual image of which are the benefits or the consistent services provided by legumes. And then we ask again after this if this information will make them increase their desire to produce or consume more legumes in the future. What we found is that although there was already a high acceptance before the information, knowing or getting more information about the benefits or the consistent services provided by legumes increase significantly, and in several percentage points, our participants' willingness to increase their consumption in the future, which is something that is telling us that perhaps we still need to communicate more about legumes, and this can also be translated to other plant-based proteins. And to finalize, an example that I think we can learn all for the future of the plant-based value chain is the success of plant-based beverage growth. It's estimated that it's going to keep growing in the next years by different platforms and by different market research companies. And I think one of the key lessons from them is that they are getting to the point that consumers in blind testing cannot find the difference between normal cow milk or the milk that we are used to and the plant-based alternatives. And this helps consumers to make this trade-off between changing milk to a plant-based alternative less difficult. So the taste and the texture matter a lot, as I said. And they also have diversified on the sources, so consumers can select the one that has less likelihood of being allergic to them. Like oat, for example, is increasing now, as you can see, because most consumers are not allergic to oat than they are to soy or almond. They are also a market that is been in constant innovation and competition. And as well, the benefits from these beverages are easy to understand, and it's easy to compare how much is used to produce a gallon of milk from a cow that from a vegetable. And finally, this growth has also made them easy to access and available to everyone in a way that I think in the future, plant-based could be the default in cafeterias or in some ingredients. And consumers, if they don't feel the difference of the texture and the flavor, they might not protest because the nutritional values are similar and the economic benefits as well as the environmental and health ones are also higher. So I think we have a good experience that is happening in our eyes with the plant-based beverages that hopefully we can apply also to the plant-based proteins. Thank you, and I look forward for your questions.
Yes, thank you, Jerico, very much for the presentations, and thank you, of course, Tryfon, for the same. We have a couple of questions that we got during your presentation, Jerico. First one was, what was the allocation method used in your research?
Probably, Dušan, it has to do with the LCA.
Yes. No,
Okay.
I think this was, yes, I think it's for you, Tryfon.
Okay. For the first business case regarding the vegan burger, no allocation was needed since the company was an SME in Italy that only produced vegan burgers, so no multiple products were to evaluate. For the second business case, where we had 3 different products, we didn't use an allocation procedure because we decided to use as a functional unit 1 kilogram of harvested peanuts. However, if we want to see the environmental footprint of each product differently, we can use mass allocation or economic allocation, meaning that we can express the results per euros that the company will receive from each product.
All right, thank you for the answer, Tryfon. The second one that we got, the question was about the EOL modeling. How did you factor in the benefit of utilizing side streams?
I believe that again, this is for the LCA. for the
Yeah.
end of life of the products. For the first business case, where we took into account also the end of life of the products, meaning products that are returned to the factory or that have gone bad. We communicated with the SME company that is a part of VALPRO Path consortium, and we received data for how they treated their waste, and we incorporated in the analysis. Now, regarding the benefits of the side streams, by valorizing the side streams, for example, the cells, we were able to produce either bioplastics or thermal energy. And let's say, we put a value in these benefits by excluding, by benefits, for example, thermal energy that is produced from burning the cells is the thermal energy that can be produced without the need of burning fossil fuels like natural gas or diesel. Or for the bioplastics, it's a product that can replace conventional plastics that already exist.
All right. Thank you for the answer, Tryfon. I think this one is this one for Jerico. So based on your research, what strategies are most effective in encouraging the adoption of alternative proteins while ensuring sustainability goals are met?
So based on literature, we can argue that the best practices is to normalize the plant-based options, but not call it them vegan, for example, or position it in a different menu, just to bring it to in restaurants, for example, or to cafeterias at the same level of other options, and to give them different names. Like instead of plant-based or vegan burger, like you can say bean-based hamburger or bean-based burger, because this reduces the dissonance from the consumer to think that they are going against or adopting a vegan position, because some of them consider them as extreme, or some of them consider that they don't align with their patterns. And what we want is just for consumers to have a diversity of protein sources. So by making this normalizing the positioning of plant-based proteins in the names and also in normal menus can help adopt them, but also making them the default in some ingredients or some dishes, and request the consumer to make the change to meat might also reduce the times they consume it, because it's an extra effort. So this is called the default effect. So just these small behavioral changes can help increase adoption in restaurants and also supermarkets.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Jericho. And we have, I think, one more. It would be, how can the combination of environmental assessment and understanding of consumer behavior guide us in the development of plant protein products in a way that is both sustainable and market ready? I think both of you could give us your opinion on this. Tryfon, would you like to start?
Yes, no problem, Dušan. So I believe that they have to be combined, because there is no point in producing a product that is sustainable if the consumers don't like it and it remains on the shelves. So LCA can be used as the tool to evaluate the sustainability and propose solutions to products that have the consumer acceptance. For example, it's important to produce a sustainable product that has the taste or the texture or any sensory characteristic that the consumers like. So firstly, you have to find a product that consumers really like and would like to buy, and then do the LCA analysis to optimize its sustainability.
Yes, thank you, Tryfon. Jericho?
In adding to Tryfon's answer, I think it's also important that these work together, because but consumers now have variety of options for different protein sources. So if we want to show the benefits of the ones we are producing or the plant-based, we need to inform them properly. And this is where science of communication is important, and how we learn from scientists doing the life cycle analysis, how we need to translate this in a way that is understandable and easy to comprehend to consumers that have a busy life, that make decisions about the product in less than a second. So we need to also complement them by working together through labeling, or to, in a way, information provision that helps them make a proper decision.
Yes. Thank you, Jericho, and thank you, Tryfon. Are there any more questions? If you have any questions for Tryfon or Jericho, you can write them down in your Q&A.
There, Dušan.
Yeah.
So I was interested in what you presented there, Jerico, in terms of the consumer, the motivations of consumers to buy products that are more sustainable, and the fact that maybe there's a lack of information being provided to the consumer. But also you presented a graph that illustrated that plant-based products are very expensive in comparison to their alternative counterparts. So I'm just wondering, is there a willingness of consumers to actually pay for this additional ecosystem's benefits? And do you think that would happen, or would it make the product more expensive in the long run?
I think at the moment, those plant-based proteins that are considered more expensive are these ones that try to substitute directly the meat, like Beyond Burgers or Impossible Burgers. And yeah, some consumers are interested in playing the premium. But these both companies say that we are not targeting vegans or vegetarians that want to have a nice texture meat. We are targeting omnivores because we want them to know that they can consume a healthier option. And we can debate whether processed plant-based protein is healthier or not than processed animal products, which seems the research that it is on the long term. But I think that consumers are willing to pay a premium for sustainable products too, and we see it with organic products, we see it with those zero emission products too, or local products too. But I think the limitation we have at the moment is that we're not communicating that properly to the consumer, and we are not using the marketing tools that we have had in our disposal to help the consumer to make a healthier choice, because it's also not so profitable in the long term, because processed food is easier, cheaper to produce, and also faster to consume. So we need to also change the system to provide more information to consumers and to make this more available. And hopefully in the future, they don't have to be considered as a premium. Like, for example, it's happening with plant-based beverages, with cafeterias tend to used to offer them as an extra fee. Like if you want to Starbucks, you have to pay some extra euros for that. But now acceptance has increased so much that they are mostly free in some cafeterias in some countries too. So I think we are going to a phase that they are starting to compete, and for some products, consumers will be willing to pay and will have to pay, but in the long term, this will be able to compete directly to the animal alternative.
In terms of just the labeling, you mentioned that correct labeling is very important for consumers to have an awareness, but also they've time constraints when they're shopping. They don't spend a lot of time really, or they don't have a lot of time to review the product before they actually buy it. So one of the moves at the moment, I suppose, is to put these QR codes in packaging that gives a kind of a readout of the environmental and ecosystem benefits of that product. I'm just wondering, and maybe it's not something you've come across, but if it is, do you think it's a useful way to inform consumers to have a QR code on a package?
I think,
or is there other ways, I suppose?
I think it will be important to have the most information as possible. Maybe it's a summary in a shelf that consumer can see easily, and if they want extra information, they can go to the QR code, because now there are also apps that you can just scan the label, these codes, and you can see some of them offer some fairness index or environmental index, but they are not so spread. So with any app, the problem will be the adoption, and any extra app in a consumer might be maybe not so easily adopted. So I think like it can be a complement to something extra like a label or like a small poster talking about the benefits of this. And I think one also alternative is to maybe mix a bit more the organic section with the normal section, so the consumer can know the differences instead of going directly to the organic area and have to pay extra, but not seeing that the benefits they are obtaining are worth the price. I think this allocation is also important, has helped for people to go directly to where they want to go, but doesn't help to make help the consumer to see the difference or the benefits they're actually getting.
Very good point. Yeah.
I would have something maybe to add to. I would like to ask Tryfon to ask. It's given the results of the VALPRO Path LCA and the project in a whole, what do you think are the most practical steps that producers and policymakers can take right now or in the near future to improve the sustainability of plant protein products in Europe?
Yes, regarding the producers, it is evident that The local sourcing of ingredients and to stop relying on imports can significantly improve the environmental and economic performance of the products. Additionally, the valorization of some side streams can also be environmentally or economically beneficial for their business cases. However, especially for the valorization of the side streams, some equipment may be necessary or some knowledge may be required from the producers and the workers in order to do so. So, regarding the policy perspective, it is crucial for these steps to be subsidized or to provide some economic help for the producers to either be able to valorize their side streams or to be able to form like some protein hubs in order for ingredients to be more able to be sourced locally.
And thank you, Tryfon. Richard, do you have any more questions that you would think? If anybody from the audience has any questions, please, you can write them down. We can give a minute or two. Just a minute to see if there is any more to our speakers. And we're not getting, I think that both of Tryfon and Jerico explained the perspective, both perspective, both research quite well, that we can now only continue the work that we're doing and continue to utilize everything that not just VALPRO Path, that even Jerico has worked on for a stronger and more sustainable plant protein product adaptation across the EU as a whole. With this, we would have our closing statements for the webinar. We would like to invite you and to follow us, VALPRO Path, on our social media channels and to come and have a look at our website where you can learn even more about the work that Tryfon doing. And we invite you to go and of course follow Jerico and see what amazing work they're doing for the plant protein production in Europe. With this, we would then be telling everybody thank you once again for coming and giving us your attention, and we hope to see you in the upcoming webinars that you'll be finding out more information soon. Thank you and goodbye.